Fellow citizens, your civil rights have been taken from you, and I'm here to tell you what that means and what you can do about it. We gather this September 17th on Constitution Day to learn about, find meaning in, and to remember the freedom, liberty, and equality for all that is enshrined in the Constitution of the United States. I am a U.S. Army veteran who swore an oath to defend the Constitution from enemies foreign and domestic. I have learned how important the Constitution is and why it needs protecting. The Constitution created a federation that above all else was for protecting the natural and civil rights of all citizens. Over the years, our federation has transformed in a way that led to oppression of the working class to the benefit of the ultra-rich. Today, our rights are in dire jeopardy as many of them have been suspended or disregarded in a multi-pronged attack on freedom. Today's politicians and revolutionaries are giving us a choice between a variety of failed policies and violence that have no respect for the Constitution. We can secure a future we are owed by educating ourselves and each other, to elect representatives that are beholden to our interests, or even to become involved directly. The Constitution was created after an opposition by some states to the proposal of a new union in 1776, and the Bill of Rights was promised to those who wouldn't have a federation without it. The Bill of Rights was proposed to convince some anti-federalist states to pass the Constitution. Patrick Henry was most famous for telling the Second Virginia Convention in 1775, "Give me liberty or give me death." Henry led the anti-federalists and feared the office of president would one day transform into the seat of a monarchy. In the years since that time, our federal government has amassed an astounding amount of power. In the 1930s, Franklin D. Roosevelt enacted a series of reforms referred to as the New Deal. He said that new problems require new solutions. This new solution was promised as a vision of freedom from the necessity of economic robber barons who were centralizing their wealth into their own hands and exploiting the working class. Today, our administrative system has streamlined and fast-tracked itself. For one example, earlier this year, the EPA stopped checking packages coming in from overseas for safety and quality. The Trump administration has slashed the Clean Water Act, the National Environmental Protection Act. FERPA no longer enforces breaches of protected patient data just in time for a push of digital telemedicine. Today, the world's richest 1% have amassed over 50% of the world's wealth. According to the constitutional experts I've listened to, we are living under an economic oligarchy. According to the newspapers, many billionaires have only gotten richer during the pandemic, while the rest of us wait for our weekly handouts or subject ourselves to new standards for our workplace, whether we like it or not. The USA and governments across the world are using military rhetoric to describe their war against the virus, which has morphed into a war by the state against the people too poor to constantly remain on or in their own property. The ultra-rich appear to be manipulating our own government to make war against us. The U.S. Attorney General Barr, in January, officially requested to suspend the writ of habeas corpus and was denied. But regardless, the Justice Department has used the pandemic as an excuse to deny due process in many ways. In our new administrative system, courts must defer to experts in regulatory agencies and don't interfere with their decisions. Most, if not all, court proceedings have become digital, many small crimes have stopped being enforced, and many criminals have been released. The Supreme Court decided in March not to hear any oral arguments until after the elections, including 3 investigating crimes by the president himself, citing the pandemic as a reason. Executive orders written by the president and many governors are treated as laws, circumvent the legislature, and therefore the very rule of law. In effect, this is ruling by decree, which is something that happens in monarchies. In 2020, America has been pulled in extreme directions very quickly. Police have dealt with funding issues, and many big cities have implemented dragnet surveillance and digital control of common citizens using facial recognition, artificial intelligence, drones, and strategies of war. The first known use of a drone to spy on American citizens was in Minneapolis George Floyd protests. The Customs and Border Protection Agency flew an MQ-9 Reaper drone in a wide circle around the metropolis. Some police agencies have proposed that due to budget cuts, police will need to enact controversial artificial intelligence to save money. A company called Hexagon is working with the police agencies to replace dispatchers with AI. This year, the first black man was arrested due to misidentification caused by AI. Studies since then have showed that AI has a harder time identifying men of color. Use of AI will be discriminatory against minorities. When a law is shown to disproportionately affect one group over another, it is called discriminatory. In my opinion, judicial reform is the biggest issue Americans face in this election cycle. Politicians are offering a fix of our justice system through reform. Americans have been given two bad choices, and some part of our society have a plan of their own. The various people of Marxist-leaning cities want to tear the judicial system apart and start from scratch by defunding police and building a new policing model that incorporates social workers into frontline policing, even though drawbacks to the plan include a period of anarchy. Joe Biden wants to rehash and fix the 1994 tough on crime bill that he promoted, which has been argued to have fostered mass incarceration long after crime declined. Donald Trump wants to push stricter law enforcement of the law until people stop breaking it. Although people are protesting too strict an enforcement of the law, it seems dubious at best to suggest that any of these three ways will lead to an America that is free, with liberty and justice for all. So remember how we got here. The Constitution was an ideal document and shaped America's original traditions and laws, making us a prosperous nation of free and productive people. The New Deal changed our system in a way that benefited the elite to the detriment of the working class. The war against the virus can only inevitably take the form of a war against human beings assumed to be sick. Pseudo-militarized police forces have turned into a private posse, while the military sets up a star-like formation inside American borders, threatening our very lives. Police have begun using weapons of war, including drones, AI, and illegal dragnet surveillance of law-abiding citizens. They plan to use strategies of war, including counterinsurgency, counterterrorism, and advanced interrogation, which includes torture like waterboarding. The will of the people and the will of both major parties are in fact at odds with each other. Vigilantes that do not represent the majority are rallying around their extremist leaders with overzealous aggression. A lot of people are scared, but if we work together, America will be indivisible again. We can still revive and protect the Constitution today. Educate yourself about the rights you have. Educate others about their rights, and come together to elect leaders that respect the Constitution. In their absence, you may need to become the leader you want to vote for. In the absence of proper representation and therefore justice, remain vigilant and hopefully defend without being offensive. Where there is a will, there is a way, and I believe when humanity puts its collective mind together, a better way can be found. It was Abraham Lincoln who said, "This country with its institutions belongs to the people who inhabit it. Whenever they shall grow weary of the existing government, they can exercise their constitutional right of amending it or exercise their revolutionary right to overthrow it." Thank you for listening.